Hi, I'm Dr. Gemma, and welcome back to Cognitive, the Knitting Psychology podcast. Cheerfully and somewhat irregularly in business since 2008. Segments today may include what's on my hooks, needles, and spindles, a strategy, something I really like, put a lid on it, oh shoot, and blather. So sit back, put your feet up, pick up your knitting, crocheting, spinning, weaving, or dyeing, or any other yarny thing you're doing, and get ready to enjoy. Well, hello there, it's Dr. Gemma, and good morning to you on this gray, overcast, beautiful Monday, September 12th, 2022. We have had a break in the extreme heat thanks to a tropical storm farther to the south of us, and it is just wonderful to sit here in 70-degree weather, let me tell you. It's nothing like a 40-degree temperature drop to make you enjoy life. So, let's see what we have here today in the warm thanks department. Well, again, thanks to everybody who sent their birthday wishes and their kind comments. And thank you to Y1X Mom for the reminder that it was you who suggested the murder of Mr. Wickham to me. And yes, you guessed right, no gritty forensic mysteries. For me, I don't read things that are based in the 20th century, and I avoid things that are based in the 19th century if they're too, shall we say, detailed or gruesome. I have nothing against those novels. I kind of get too much of that in my work. So I think that for my leisure, I stay away from that. I don't need that much reality. Speaking of reality, the new COVID vaccines are now including variant antibodies. So now they work against Omicron. So please, everybody, get your vaccines. Can you believe this? I still have 2 patients who are refusing vaccines. And they've had COVID. And I just think, oh, go them. You know, I always say if you're going to thin out the gene pool, that's your problem. Now, all joking aside, please get your shots and please get the new ones because there's a good reason to. And after all, at this point, someone was saying to me last week, well, I'm not going to get those anymore. I'm not going to get those anymore. And I'm thinking, why? Like, if you went far enough to get the first ones, why are these making a big deal? What do you think? You're purifying your blood or something? I don't know. I find people's ability to refuse reality always sort of shocks me. But there you are. And get your kids their shots. And let's just see if we can have a relatively quiet and relatively COVID-free winter. I say that without looking at the numbers for today. So I'm not sure what's going on in LA County right now. I'm ashamed to admit. In the meantime, what's on my hooks and needles, you're saying? Well, I didn't finish anything except I finished 1 sock in the Asylum Fibers colorway. It's their sock yarn, and the colorway is Far, Far Away. It's their glitter sock yarn. I'm being very lazy about this. The link is in the show notes. You can see the sock in the show notes, and you can check the yarn. I should be nicer about this, except these people don't normally swim into my can. I'm pretty sure I picked this yarn up at, my guess would be Stitches West. I don't think this was Random Yarn Shop wandering. If it was somewhere down in Pasadena. At any rate, it's a very pretty yarn, and I really quite like it. And I like the way it came out. It looks like a Monet painting, like water lilies or something. I suspect it's meant to be knit at a tighter gauge on tinier needles because it looks like it's trying to stripe, but I am defeating its best efforts. It's a beautiful sock, though, and I'm looking forward to getting the other one done. I don't usually suffer from second sock syndrome. I haven't started the second one, though. I just finished the first yesterday. And usually I cast on right away, so I avoid second sock syndrome, but I just haven't had a chance. I've been running around this weekend, and I've been studying like crazy. In the meantime, you may be wondering about the lane splitter skirt. I haven't given it a lot of love lately, but I've done a few rows. It's just beautiful. I think I'm on the 3rd and 4th skeins of the Noro Silk Garden in the size 4 weight that I'm using. and the worsted weight. And I'm just enjoying it. And it's just a very soothing, repetitive, easy pattern. I can't recommend it enough. If you go into the link in the show notes, you will see, if you go to the Ravelry page and you look at all the finished objects, oh my Lord, nobody looks bad in this. It is really a fantastic skirt. And it's been done in all sorts of colorways and all sorts of different yarn companies. It's just a really good skirt because after all, anything knit on the bias is going to look great if it's big enough, draping over your curves. And the lane splitter is no exception. So I'm deeply looking forward to finishing the big rectangle, seaming it, and getting onto the waistband. The don't know yet, the crocheted blocks from my leftover yarn in Bravo Sport from Knit Picks of all people. But hey, cheap yarn for a blanket is cheap yarn for a blanket. I have to say this, Knit Picks are not my favorite people for a number of reasons. I'm not big on their tools. They always break. Their yarns are okay. Their yarns, I gotta say, their yarns do okay by me. This is an acrylic. If you're gonna do a blanket, first of all, no, I'm not doing any wool blankets because we have moths. And the temperature blanket was so much fun. I can't believe it's been a year since I was working on it, almost a full year. And so I kept buying in the Knit Picks sales, kept buying more of this. Now Knit Picks does this thing where they sell all their green yarns at a reduced price. This includes yellow greens and blue greens around St. Patrick's Day, and somewhere in July I think they do their reds, and then it's Valentine's Day they do their red pinks. No, I forget what they do in July. It might be yellows. At any rate, you can see what's going on here. Every time they'd have one of these sales, I'd get a little paranoid and go, well, I'll just buy a couple skeins, blah, blah, blah. Well, okay. Meanwhile, I start doing these blocks, and I say, am I really going to get 361 blocks, which would be 19 squares by 19 squares, a big square blanket, which is good for a queen-size bed. Queen sizes, in terms of bedding, queens are usually square-shaped. So the bedding for a queen is usually even-numbered squares, So here I am doing this, thinking, oh, this is idiotic. I just don't have that much yarn. Okay, so here we are. We are at least 250 days into the year. My birthday was day 250, in fact. And so I counted and found when I was supposed to have 250, I had 254. So I'm a little bit over, which is nice. There's a picture of them all in the show notes. Since I keep mentioning the show notes, you know that they are on our group on Ravelry. And they're also at cognitivepodcast.blogspot.com. Okay, so there's a picture of my 250 squares. I have this hyperabundance of the solid orange, which is nice. I don't care. I don't care. It's a lot of squares to sew together is all I'm going to say. But anyway, I'm stunned because now I'm looking at the box and I'm thinking, the box that has the yarns. And the whole purpose here was to get this box out of my study. It's an ugly cardboard box sitting in my study. All right, and so of course I've done what we all do. I've put other yarns in it. It used to be nothing but the Knit Picks. All right, so I'm going through this, and I look at it. There's 5 skeins on the top. That's 50 more blocks. Now I'm at 254, so that takes me over 300. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to run out of yarn at like 330 squares. Oh, no, I'm not. I dug through the box, and I just gave up counting. I think I'm going to have a hyperabundance, but that might be good because I do have to seam these things together. So we shall see how this works, but it is rather humorous. And yes, I have figured out what 18 by 18 would be, what 19 by 19, what 17 by 17 would be. If all else fails, I'll make a rectangular blanket instead of a square, as long as I get enough width. But I'm not worrying right now about anything failing. I have got a huge amount of this yarn. My greatest mistake was in not realizing I could have done a second temperature blanket. However, I have to tell you, I love my first. And when I thought about doing a second one, number one, I wanted to run screaming into the desert. But number two, I said, the 2021 temperature blanket is pretty special in its own way. I don't really want to reproduce that. I don't want to keep cranking those out. I don't want to feel like it's something I must do every year. If I could change that temperature blanket, I probably wouldn't. I think if I ever do another one, I will do it somewhat wider, but that would take a lot of patience, and God only knows how much yarn I'd end up with at the end of the year. And I would probably mark it. Like I would probably run a line of black or dark blue through it to show the solstice and the equinox. I might run a colored line to show birthdays and such. It is fun. It really is fun to look back at it and take a rough guess at what the weather was doing this time last year, if you're that kind of nerd. Meanwhile, October 25th will be 300 blocks. Everybody cross your fingers. It seems insane to me that I've done this. It's also feeling insane that I did a temperature blanket. Like when you know things like my birthday is the 250th day of the year, and then you look at the temperature blanket and you go, God, I really did do 365 rows. I mean, that's amazing. Meantime, the Pennsylvania Dutch embroidery is sitting on the back burner, as is the Bright Cherries brick. I have reached the moment where I've realized I am going to pull out the brick. And I've also realized I've got a few spare skeins of that colorway just sitting wrapped up in yarn sleeves. And I thought, I may not pull out the brick. I may just knit those guys first. And then when I get finished with them, go back and start systematically pulling out the brick skein by skein and steaming the yarn and then knitting it in. In other words, I think it's not going to be this all-at-once yanking out event. I think it's more going to be a little bit gradual here and there until the achieved effect happens. And also, I have a bunch of yarn skeined up to make a very pretty Norwegian pattern yoke neck. So we'll see what happens next. It's a pink yarn, and I must say I'm looking forward to it. Pink, and I was going to use white as the contrast color in the neck. I just really wanted something that was a drastically different color because I've been using a lot of darker colors in the last few sweaters. And of course, I've been using my own favorite ocean greens and stained glass greens and blues. And it's time for a bit of a color change. Of course, the brick would do that too, but it's dark and I'm craving something light and I'm craving a patterned neckline or craving a yoke. Because I've done a lot of bricks at this point. I think I've done 3 of them. Have I? I think the Bright Cherries may have been my 3rd brick or my 4th brick. I can't even remember. It tells you it's time to change to a different pattern. In the meantime, as I've said, I have one sock on the Midsummer Socks done, and that is in the show notes. The Wrapped in Tiny Chains crocheted cardigan. I'm just stalled on a front panel, and every now and then I just sit down and do a row or two. I'm not working on it hard because my hands are sore. Why are my hands sore? Because I'm working about 2 hours a day on the American Sign Language. So yeah, the crocheting, just keeping up with the blocks is enough. Knitting gives it a bit of a break, so I should hopefully get the socks and the skirt done. And like I said, by the time that all gets finished, by the time the Wrapped in Tiny Chains, the socks, the skirt, it'll be time for me to do the Halloween socks probably. I'm not sure if I'm going to have the yarn to do it the way I normally do, which is fun. It means I'm going to go through my stash looking for harvest colors. And it will be time to be kicking off a new sweater. And bit by bit, yes, I am getting through all the yarn sitting in my study, which is great. I've got a lot of fluff to spin. Hopefully I'll get back to that. If you want to see my favorite fiber and yarn resources, they are in the show notes. Basically, it's Lisa Souza Yarns, Webs, Sierra Cottons and Wools, which is an LYS in Bishop. And then Wool & Company, which I use online. I don't know if they have an LYS. And of course, our beloved Dizzy Blonde Studios, because her colorway is like Lisa Souza, just to die for. So my 2 favorite indie dyers, I'm just going to be clear, are Lisa Souza and Laura over at Dizzy Blondes. That doesn't mean I don't buy from other people, but I haven't in a while because I've got so much yarn I could insulate the house. Dizzy Blondes, my own Dizzy Blondes, my spinning, no, not doing a thing. So let's get on to the strategy, shall we? So sooner or later, I've got to run out of day-to-day self-management strategies. That's what I'm thinking. So I'm still here in the emotional management strategies. However, I think I may be running out. And what I want to hit on today is the stuff that's very unique to cognitive behavioral strategies. And people don't think about this, but these are routine parts of CBT when I'm treating people. One is called the diary card, and this is hardcore CBT. And you can go anywhere on the internet and just search CBT, Cognitive Behavioral Therapy, diary cards. You're going to get a lot of them. There are apps that have them. What is a diary card? Well, it's exactly what it says it is. It's a card, and you download these, and you just fill it out every day to keep track of how you're doing. When I talk to patients, I don't use this as much as I could. If I was hardcore CBT without the DBT, although DBT uses these too, I would be more into these. But when you get patients that are really stuck, you teach them how to do this, and then you encourage this. And there are so many diary cards out there. I could probably hand them out. When you start doing that, patients get all restive, like, oh no, you're giving me too much homework and I feel obligated. And then they're all ashamed. I forgot to do the cards. So I don't do a lot of that. But the diary cards, basically, you fill out how you did every day. This is kind of useful. And I use variations of this on myself, because you do need a running log to encourage yourself. Now with me, it was weight loss. That's the most common diary card I've done. When I found out I was diabetic and I felt absolutely hopeless at 225 pounds, I just weighed myself once a week on Friday mornings before I ate anything, and I recorded it. And it's shocking to look back at it. Every time I feel like, oh God, I'm so fat, I can look back and find myself at 200 pounds. I should be somewhere between 150 and 180 or 170, I would say. It depends on whose theories of weight you believe. However, I don't believe in weight that much. I believe in measuring your waistline against your height. That's the most biologically reliable thing we have, by the way. Okay, so, these things encourage you. You look back and you can see how you've been worse than you are now. And of course, this is the compare skill from distress tolerance that you're hearing me use right now. Now, the important thing is the diary card weight is kind of its own scale, but you can use other scales. And I teach people how to do this in session really routinely. A lot of therapists with less experience will say to you, well, rate your depression on a scale of 0 to 10. Now, that's an attempt to be CBT, and that's good. It's always good. Because your idea of your depression, you go, oh, I'm really depressed. That doesn't mean anything to me as your therapist. But if you come in and go, I'm so depressed, I immediately am going, are you suicidal? All right, so you teach people how to rate their depression. And it's a very easy thing to do. And what we're doing is we're making sure that when you come in and say, I'm really depressed, I can say, can you give me a number? And when you give me a number right away, I have a sense where you are. Now, your numbers may be different than my numbers, but if I know your scale, I know in your system relative to yourself where you are. All right, so it goes like this. You say on a scale of 0 to 10, how depressed are you? How sad are you? How happy are you? Whatever. Okay, now I'm going to use depression because that's easy. So you say 0 to 10. What is a 10? It's the worst you could be. It's suicidal. If you say 10 to me, it means you're saying, I'd like you to help me get to a hospital. Okay, so that's pretty clear. So then you say, well, what would a 0 be? And this is where people get it wrong. 0, they say, oh, I'm so happy. It's like I'm at Disneyland. No, that's not a 0. That's a whole different scale. A 0 on depression is simply the absence of depression. In other words, I would call it contentment or neutrality. Those are slightly different words. I realize, choose your own. So when I talk about it with patients, I always say, my 0 is brushing my teeth in the morning. And they laugh. And I say, well, when I'm brushing my teeth, I don't care. I'm not happy. I'm not sad. I'm simply engaged in brushing my teeth. And that's what you want to teach people 0 is, because you get people who are excessive, who tend to go to extremes, who have never been trained to talk in anything but black and white. They don't know how to talk about gray. So you have to explain it to them. You also get people who are dramatic or histrionic, that they do everything in extremes because they feel better that way. And that's kind of an important indicator diagnostically. But nonetheless, they especially need some help learning that they don't have to always be wildly happy in order to not be sad. You have to teach people there's middle, there's gray, there's I'm okay. I'm not happy, I'm not sad. Okay, so 0 is kind of brushing your teeth. So then you say, well, what is a 5? 5 is hard to define. What's the exact middle between I'm brushing my teeth versus you should probably hospitalize me? And for me, a 5 is I can do this, but I can't, it's really, really hard and I can just barely do it. So you say, what activity for you would be a 5? And I always use the example, going to a dentist when you know they're going to drill. You can do it, but you're just going to have a really unhappy day thinking about it. You're tense when you're going in there, but you do it. And this varies for other people. And again, a lot of times when I'll say, what's your 10? What's the worst thing? And people will say the thing that brought them into therapy. I was in a mass shooting. I saw somebody die. I saw an accident, whatever. Okay, so that's it. So you have to help people. What is a 0? What is a 5? What is a 10? Depending on the patient, I may also say what is a 3 and what is a 7. Now, in CBT, one of the things about a 7, the 7 is that's it. After a 7, I'm just kind of crazy. I'm so freaked out I can't think, but I may not need a hospital. That's what we do when we're doing PTSD work, just so you have some scale there. But again, your 7 is your 7. Your 7 can be totally different than mine. Now you say, but Gemma, your scale is probably going to sound different from my scale. Because first of all, I always talk in extremes, right? I had to learn to do gray myself because I was raised in a family where everything was all the worst or all the best. So I had to learn to do gray, but then I treat really serious stuff. So when I talk about this stuff, I always sound a bit extreme because I use extreme examples because they're clear, they're easy. Most people aren't going to be saying, I want to go to a hospital, but yet they want me to know they're really miserable. All right. So what I'm really saying is my 0 to 10 is different than yours, is different than somebody else's. All right. But what happens is when I hear your scale and I hear you talk about what your 5 is, what your 10 is, what is the worst thing that's ever happened to you that you would currently call a 10, that sort of thing, I'm learning your scale. So I'm learning relative to you, this is what is good and this is what is bad. Okay, so I would highly recommend you start considering developing your scales. And the best thing I've seen is in families teach each other their scales. And we do this in couples therapy a lot, where we teach couples to talk in terms of scaling. So you get up and your spouse is sitting there and they're just in a bad mood. And they say to you, this has nothing to do with you, which is really great. That's the real thing. That's love. But then you say, well, how bad is this right now? And they go, well, I may look irritable, but I'm really only a 4 in my grumpy scale. And you know them, and I don't want to meet you when you're a 7, but you just, you just say, okay. Now you may realize their 4 is your 8 or your 7. And you need to know that their scale is shifted in a different direction than yours. So the more you know people and the more you use this with other people, the better that works. And you notice this goes on every time you go into a doctor's office. Yes, we taught them that. Thank you, Dr. Beck, who invented this. Aaron Beck, who was a physician, who was a psychiatrist. And you go in there and there's a pain scale on the wall and it's got little smiley faces. Okay, and you notice the 10 has tears. Let me tell you something from experience. You walk into a doctor's office and tears are coming out your eyes, they take that really seriously. Okay, so the 0 to 10 scale. So when you're working on managing yourself and when you're trying to keep track, how do I feel? Or you say, oh, I've been so depressed. That's a great time to start keeping your journal and putting a scale in your journal and working out your scale and thinking about it. The other thing is, if you're paying attention, this is the E skill from the distress tolerance acronym ACCEPTS for distraction. In other words, I get up and I'm like, I hate everything. I hate everything. And I had one of these last night where a friend got really depressed and started talking about what's going to happen if the political majority in the House of Representatives changes. And I got really down. And I finally went and sat with my husband and said, I'm really down. But, you sit there and you say, oh, I'm so down, this is really scary. But then I stopped and scaled it and said, I've been through a lot worse than this. So what am I really doing? I'm doing the E and I'm doing the C compare. That the E is, I'm getting all nervous and upset. But the problem is not inside me. The problem is outside me. What will happen if the House of Representatives changes in its political balance? Okay, inside me is fear, anxiety, fear of the future. That's not all that surprising when you're my age. A little tough growing old, let me tell you. You worry more about the long-term security because you're heading towards living on fixed income. All right. So what I did was an E. I separated my emotions and managed them. I'm kind of anxious right now, so what did I do? I put on Pride and Prejudice, because if Jane Austen doesn't fix you, nothing will, on my sleep headband. And I laid down and started listening to Pride and Prejudice from the very beginning, really appreciating the craftsmanship. The more I hear it, the more brilliant that novel gets. It's astonishing in its economy. But anyway, so of course I managed the emotion and I went to bed, fell asleep. And of course that's a sensory, I relaxed myself, or the R from improved relaxation. And also, when I was doing the E, I was comparing. I've been through bad stuff, as my husband did. His immediate reaction was the compare skill. He said, remember Richard Nixon? Remember how scared we were in Watergate? And I thought, yeah, I've been through this before. So these are all the skills. These are the distress tolerance skills. But in a sense, when I sat down and did the E skill, when I scaled, how upset am I really? I realized I'm actually, in terms of fear here, I'm scaring myself. I could see this is a short-term thing. It's going to be okay, positive future orientation. And my real anxiety here was about a 4. So I was able to go to sleep. All right. So that is the use of diary cards and self-scaling. And I'm not going to link any because I don't want to recommend any. Find your own. Just get on Google and search diary cards because I don't want you to think, this has Dr. Gemma's imprimatur. These are the great diary cards. Look around, see if you can find cards that match your needs. There are also applications that use diary cards for CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, and dialectical behavioral therapy. Or you can make your own based on your own needs. I really encourage that. I think making up your own list of things that you're watching in yourself. By the way, I really recommend, even if everything's going great, you do this anyway. I would tell you as a thought exercise, you should follow yourself for about a month with diary cards. You should put down anything you're interested in. My eating, my exercise, my weight, my mood, when I'm at different moods at different times of the day. It's really kind of key that in self-maintenance, you know who you are, which means you have to research you. And diary cards are a great way to do it. Moving right along to the fluffy books. I'm not even going to talk about Introduction to American Deaf Culture because I can't take the course until the fall. They may have a winter version of it. I'm really bummed because I can't take ASL 2 in the winter semester, which is only a month, because it's too intense. I don't have the time to put into it every day. I'm working every day with just meeting twice a week and nearly killing myself. And I may not be able to get to ASL 2, 102 really, until the summer, which means either I take ASL 101 over again, which I'm considering just to get better, just to pick up more signs and really kind of harden up, firm up the basics. But I really want to take 102, and I'm kind of depressed at the same time every day. I think about quitting 101. Yeah, you think you're the only one who does this kind of thing in your head? No, Dr. Gemma does it too. In the meantime, we have a film coming up in our course called Through Deaf Eyes. Well, you know what I did. I looked it up, and I went and watched it. It's on YouTube. It's a very good film. It's a documentary. It's, I believe it was the National Endowment for the Humanities plus National Public Radio plus Gallaudet University, I believe. They're all in there, I think, in the funding. It's a very, very good documentary about the history of deafness in the United States. It waters down towards the end. They start trying to talk about deaf culture. The reason I call that watering down is they really could have stayed with history. There's a lot more stuff that could be said. They could have explored more about Gallaudet. They could have talked about the historical influences at the time of these events in deaf history. And instead they go into deaf culture, which in my humble opinion, they should have done a 2-hour documentary just on that. So again, they're trying to get a little too much in there. But there's that sense, as there always is with these kind of projects, that, oh my gosh, we've only got so much money, and if the political culture changes, we'll never get money again, so we'll never get to do that other documentary we should do. So we're going to cram it all in here. But this is Through Deaf Eyes. You can find it on YouTube for free. It's a 2-hour movie. It's absolutely absorbing. Another Enola Holmes novel came out. This is The Elegant Escapade. The link is in the show notes. It's about 150 pages. She gets away with publishing these as novellae by calling them young adult novels, and they are. However, I'm enjoying them. Now, the original cycle of Enola Holmes, I can't remember if it was 5 or 6 of these, where she sets up an impossible situation for Enola, and in that cycle, she brings it to a reasonable conclusion. And this kind of leaves her with Enola having a very different life than was posited in that original internal cycle. And I don't like it that much. I mean, now it's like Enola Holmes, girl detective, not as interesting as it was Enola Holmes in this very interesting situation with herself and Mycroft and Sherlock, her older brothers. And I don't want to give away spoilers, which is why I'm being sort of opaque here. However, The Elegant Escapade brings back a character who's very, very interesting. And again, there's a sense the author, Nancy Springer, wants to resolve this. But I really like this character, and I really like what they're doing with it. It's very, very interesting. So, yeah, there's a certain psychological element to it. There's some decent research. I'm really enjoying it. You do wonder about why she can live where she can live, why the other occupants aren't saying, you're a little young to be here. But it's good. There's another character. She needed a strong female influence character, and they bring one out, and it's a very nice character. You spend a lot of the novel going, is this character too good to be true? That's the one slight weakness, but Nancy Springer's trying to give Enola strong female role models, that she's taking a really intelligent point of view here, that a young woman like this, a girl in her teens, really does need a certain amount of guidance. And the premise of the series is, we're in the Victorian era, and the premise is that no matter how sharp Sherlock Holmes is, men do not understand the world of women in this era, and I think that's a very good premise, and a very interesting premise, and a lot of people have taken a swing at it, but I really think Nancy Springer's doing a great job with how completely different those worlds are. It's interesting to me culturally, too, because in many cultures, men and women as adults are segregated from each other. And Western European and North American culture doesn't really do that, as far as I know. I'm being a little broad with that brushstroke, so be patient with me. And it is kind of important to realize that the Victorian era in Western Europe, there is that segregation. Well, now I've been interrupted and I've kind of lost my train of thought, but that's good. At any rate, that's the latest Enola Holmes novel, The Elegant Escapade. The other good thing is we're getting the air conditioner drainage fixed, which has been a problem since we've owned the house. And this time we actually have a permanent solution, which is really nice. So there's a little bit of the blather. Meanwhile, back in the fluffy books, She-Hulk on Disney. I have to tell you, episode 3 just had me howling with laughter. It is the Megan the Stallion episode. And it's just hilarious. It's hilarious because they really take on all the nasty fanboy responses to She-Hulk. And they just take it right off the internet, and it's so funny. And they use the breaking the fourth wall, as Jasmine was pointing out to me, just wonderfully. The ending is phenomenal, and it is really, quite literally in your face what the nasty fanboys are complaining about, which is basically, how dare you sexualize the Hulk by making it She-Hulk, by making it female, by, well, I don't want to ruin that ending. It's okay. And the really funny thing here is, can we talk for a minute about superheroes? And now, I don't know if you need to get the kids out of the room for this, because we're going to be talking about the sexualization a little bit of superheroes. And so, you have to make your decision about what the kids can hear. But then nothing obscene, but still there's certainly going to be inference, strong inference. Now, when I was a kid, superheroes were like guys in weird tights, and we all thought that was a little odd. Okay, but even we sort of wondered. In those days, it was all Superman and Batman, and they wore underwear, and we were normal humans, and we did look, and so it just was nothing. It was a triangle. Well, that changed, and Marvel did it. Marvel started hiring really good artists, and they did not hesitate to sexualize all the superheroes. I'm sorry, DC really was behind them on this one. And the fanboys flocked there in droves. And I am here to tell you, with the exception of Iron Man, and even the Iron Man costume has been sexualized. Come on, guys. What do you think they're doing? It's all about homoeroticism. And you can't miss it. The straining muscles. And then when they start bringing in female characters, well, of course, they're all babes. And they're all drawn like ads for Victoria's Secret. So the fanboys who are complaining about sexualizing the Hulk, are you kidding me? Seriously, are you kidding me? Look at any drawing of the male Hulk. Okay, and don't forget what happens when he rips all those clothes. You think ripping out of clothing as you grow larger is not sexualized? Are you kidding me? Are you 9 years old? I mean, come on. And that's why the episode is so funny, is that once again, Marvel does this really nice job of turning around and looking at itself. And suddenly Marvel is saying, what have we done here? Now, they're not backing away from it. They're not saying we shouldn't have done it. And you do have to be clear about that. In fact, the ending of the episode, which is just hilarious, is very literally an in-your-face, you bet we're doing this. Okay, so you get my point. There's enough on that. I did finish The Murder of Mr. Wickham. Thank you to I1X Mom. I really enjoyed it, and you could sort of pick, if you know your characters. Of course, I've listened to all the novels now except for Emma about 30 times. So maybe it's just me. You can kind of pick how this has to resolve, and I really enjoyed it. It doesn't take anything away from it. I have to tell you, whenever you read a sequel, so to speak, to the Austen novels, you have to live with the interpretation of the characters. And the author plays up certain aspects of characters that are hinted at that I would not play up, and nonetheless, I enjoyed this novel. It's a lot of fun, because if you're an Austen fan, you hate Mr. Wickham. And every Austen follower, everybody who tries to write a novel following Austen, almost always they try to take on Wickham in some way. What happened to him? He's a lovable rogue. He's all sorts of interesting things. Frankly, I've always wanted to see somebody kill him, and I really like this novel. And the way it works out is believable. I enjoyed it. I have to say, get used to, you may think the characters would have had slightly different outcomes. One gripe, I do not like the oldest son of the Darcys. I don't like what she does to him, but it still is fun. And I don't like it because she makes him a little too different in a way that I would not think might have been biologically possible at the time. I don't want to go into that, but it creates problems at Pemberley that are challenging to address. And the way she solves it is very sweet and is kind of nice. But it shows that she does not understand the very issue that she's suggesting is going on with the oldest son of the Darcys. Nonetheless, I enjoyed it and I like the ending a great deal. In the meantime, I was looking at taking Anthropology 103 over the winter break, which is only a month of intense classes. So that made me go research it. Son of a gun, I love those anthropology people. This is cultural anthropology, and they have done a textbook, and they have put it online as in PDF form, free. And it's written by perfectly competent scholars at a range of universities. They take turns writing chapters. Each chapter is a standalone topic in cultural anthropology. There's got to be like 20 chapters. I love this thing. I'm going to read it whether I take the class or not. But, you know, the winter month, the winter quarter, whatever they call it, the winter term at my local community college, they have very limited offerings. And I thought, well, why not take something, you know, and there's nothing in sign that I can take from the look of it. So why not take one of their other offerings and add it onto my major? Yes, I am majoring in sign, believe it or not. I just don't care about it. I'm not taking anything for grades right now. Who cares? I'm 62 years old and I've got more degrees than I know what to do with. So it's really funny. And that has changed my way of looking at the ASL class as well. So, you know, who cares? But at any rate, I did find this ripping good free textbook and all the teachers are using it. And I would recommend you go read it. The link is in the show notes. So that was an awful lot of fluffy book. Let's march on to something I really like. Here's something I really like. People who vote. Yes, there's been a huge rush of people registering to vote. And yes, 70% of them have been women. Why? Well, I think we can see it's a reaction to Roe versus Wade. I also hope this is going to change the outcome of who owns the House of Representatives and the Senate. No, sorry, I want the Senate. I want everybody, look, you know where I stand on that. I'm not even going to go into that. Okay, but something I really like, voting. At last, the American public has been stirred from lethargy. At last, significant groups are not saying, I'm not going to vote because nothing ever changes. At last, one great thing you get from an attempted fascist overthrow of your government is the voters woke up. So, hooray, everybody get out there and vote, okay? Go and research the issues. Go through all the proposals. Actually read them, okay? Don't just say, I heard this ad. Actually go read them. Do your homework. It's September. If you can look things up, now is the time. Take notes. You don't have to do it all at once. You can spend 20 minutes a day on this project, and you're going to be an informed voter by November. The other thing I really like is the seat leash for dogs for cars. I'm in love with this. We got this when I was going to bring Queenie home, and when my husband brought her home, it worked terrific. What is it? It is a short leash, and on the body of the leash there's a bungee that stretches it, allows it to stretch. And then at one end there is a hook to go to the dog's collar. At the other end there is an expandable loop, and that loop goes around the base of the headrest of your car seat. So you put the loop around the headrest and tighten it. Then your dog has the other end hooked to her harness or her collar, and she can't go climbing all around the car. Let me tell you, 9 years of Eleanor climbing around the car, I can't tell you how much I love this thing. Why? Because Queenie is like Eleanor on speed. Eleanor was sort of restrained and a little bit, well, she took her time warming up to other dogs, and she loved people. But basically, Eleanor could be a little standoffish. Queenie has none of that. Queenie wants to be in your lap, kissing your face, talking to you, and talking to every other dog in the place. Eleanor was murder in a car. Eleanor was a collie. Collies think for themselves. What did this lead to? I'm not making this up. Eleanor once tried to drive the car. She watched me thoughtfully, then she climbed into my lap, she put her paws on the steering wheel, and she tried to reach the pedals with her hind legs. I have never seen anything like this in a dog. I don't care if you believe me. It was like something out of a lousy novel. But it always has worried me that I've had a dog who actually tried to drive the car. And if you ever met Captain, you would know there's potential there. And when I get on to the blather, we're going to find out more about the things Queenie can do that blow my mind. Eleanor blew my mind in a number of ways. Eleanor, when I was decorating a Christmas tree, when she was a puppy, watched me decorate the tree, then she watched me put all the gifts under it, and then she went over, picked up her dog dish in the dining room, in her mouth, and carried it into the living room and put it under the tree and looked up at me expectantly. Okay, honest to God, I don't know if the Matrix has changed or what, but these dogs are a little bit smarter than I ever expected. So having this leash, what does this do? It's great. It's totally adjustable. So if your dog is really tiny, you can also loosen it around the headrest, and that'll give you more length on the leash. But it works so well. Queenie basically can't do anything but sit politely or lie down politely on the front seat. So you can see a picture of her in the car with the leash if you want to see this. You have to squint a little bit, but you will see the pink leash going up to the headrest. And it is a wonderful, wonderful contraption. I got it online at Amazon, and I just have to say, I'm sure you can find it at any pet store. But this is the car seat leash for your dog, and it just keeps your dog seated safely on the seat. I put her on the front passenger side. And, you know, when she was really young and not as house trained, I put pads underneath her so if she needed to pee or anything. She's now past that. So at any rate, I recommend this highly. Let's see. No cooking this week except the normal stuff. So let's get on to the blather. ASL, oh my gosh, this is supposed to be the equivalent of 1 year of high school. It's a semester. Holy Moses. I have to do this 2 hours a day minimum. On weekends, like right now, I do it for 4 or 5 hours a day. It's challenging because we're doing it online. It's not the teacher's fault. There's no effective way to do this online. There is just nothing you can do to learn signs. You can't get a textbook. I mean, I have workbooks and they have people with their hands and arrows and photographs, and you can't see the photographs well enough. I can't, and it's not about my vision. You just can't really see them, and the arrows are kind of meaningless. You have to see vocabulary. You have to see somebody performing it, somebody signing it, okay? So it is hard work to pick up vocabulary. So how do we do it? Monday and Wednesday night, 2 hours. First hour, she just gives us vocabulary. We all imitate it. And then the second hour, we all try to speak with it. That is not easy. And then she says, I don't want you learning it online. I want you just learning it from me. You'll get mistakes if you get it online. She's right. They're dialects. And so I know I occasionally will give a sign in the wrong dialect and she'll look a bit puzzled, then have an aha on her face. Okay. The other thing, of course, the question of should you learn it from a deaf person versus an extremely competent hearing person. That's a very vexed question. I've talked about it before. I don't want to go into it in depth. But you do have to remember a lot of deaf people were hearing people at one point. That you have a lot of deaf people who lost their hearing due to illness or accident in their earlier years. So again, if you have a deaf person who is not a native speaker, they may be a native English speaker, yeah, it can be a very conflicted thing. All I can tell you is the way I'm doing it, I just have to throw myself at it. I just have to practice. So yes, I've already done some practice this morning, and I will do another few hours today before class. But it's amazing. This is the first time I was working with an interpreter and a deaf patient. And in the deaf community, you never talk, if you're a speaker, whether you're deaf or hearing, you never talk to the exclusion of other people. It's considered incredibly rude. So usually the interpreter will show up a minute or two before my deaf patient, and she and I will just exchange pleasantries, and she immediately signs it to the deaf patient. Because the whole purpose of the session, we all recognize, is not for me or for her, it's for the deaf patient. So this week was very funny because we were talking, I can't remember probably about the class, and she turned around when the patient showed up and immediately signed it. And I apparently got a very weird look on my face. And they both stopped and said, "Are you all right?" And I said, "I can read what you're saying." And they just started laughing. And they said, "So what? Aren't you supposed to be able to do that?" And I said, "It never occurred to me it would work." And everybody was laughing. The other funny thing about ASL that I never saw coming. Okay, when I learn a foreign language, of course, one of the challenges is to think in that language. And the more you can do that, the more effectively you can speak in that language. Now, I've spoken Spanish since I was about 15. And so, yeah, there are times where something will be said to me and I'll hear the answer in Spanish in my head. And you don't think much about it. And Italian, somewhat. Okay, and yes, even at times, classical Latin, as weird as that sounds. Well, the funniest thing is now when people are talking to me, I'll see hands floating through the periphery of my vision, signing what they're saying. Like I'll suddenly understand, if I said that in ASL, it would be this. I did not expect that to leap from spoken word to signed word. It's very weird. What do those hands look like? Sometimes they're just black and white line drawings. It's weird. But yes, it's true. ASL is a language, and when you start learning it, it starts intuitively popping into your head just like any other language would. So this is kind of cool. I still don't know Spit, but that isn't going to stop me. I have this coming Friday and Saturday off, and I'm hoping to go to a deaf event at a Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf in Ventura and one at a Starbucks in Stevenson Ranch. I'm hoping to go. And I'm scared nobody will talk to me. And more than that, I'm scared somebody will. But you have to go and try. But here's what's really apparent. I will never learn if I don't. You have to talk to real people. And I am very grateful because I was telling my interpreter and my patient, I'm required to go to 2 deaf events. Because they were saying, you're never going to learn this if you don't practice. And I said, it's so true. So I said, I'm going to 2 deaf events. And my patient, God bless her, said, this is a deaf event. You could talk about this. And I said, I can't because it's against the law to identify you in any way. And this could be a very significant identification factor in the deaf community if you've ever spoken about going to therapy. And she looked thoughtful and she said, I really want to help you though. I really appreciate this. And I said, I know. And I said, one of the big challenges I'm learning that I would never have known if I hadn't gone on this journey with ASL is the deaf culture is so communal that to them, the privacy laws in therapy don't make the kind of sense they make to hearing people. That deaf people share a lot more about themselves and a lot more personal stuff. And they really count on their communal culture. and they are very accepting of people. So, yeah, I said, it's been a challenge making sure that I'm not violating HIPAA laws when I deal with you guys. So, again, our interpreter is wonderful, and she doesn't have confidentiality, but the content does, and the patient does, And I said, how many deaf or hard of hearing or ASL speaking mental health therapists are there? And they both immediately made the sign for very few. And I said, that's what I thought. That's what I thought. And what disturbs me is I just don't know if I'm going to live long enough to get fluent enough to do the therapy that way. I mean, I've spoken Spanish for 40 years and I'm hesitant to do therapy in Spanish, although I'll use an interpreter, but I will frequently speak Spanish and comment on what I'm hearing in Spanish when I have a Spanish-speaking patient. So ASL, it's working, and I'm working too. I'm working really hard every week. I think I should just quit. That's enough. I don't need to keep going. But, practice is everything. Yes, I'm taking fingerspelling workshops online. I'm doing anything I can to get fingerspelling better. I'm lousy at reading it, but I'm getting much better at performing it. In the meantime, speaking it. In the meantime, the pup date, Queenie and Captain in Blankets. Blankets is in a second springtime. She loves having a puppy. And of course, she does see her as a puppy. Blankets has had puppies of her own. Captain hasn't, but Captain still treats her as her baby. Blankets comes and tells me if we crate the puppy has to be indoors and nobody's watching her, we will crate her. And she'll cry, but usually she'll just fall asleep. Blankets will nag me the whole time. Hey, the puppy's in a crate. You got to get the puppy out of the crate. Puppy shouldn't be in a crate. Captain is more like a very tired babysitter. That she babysits her, she loves her, they cuddle up together, but sometimes Captain will come and hide in my room to get away from the annoying baby. Queenie is full of energy. She is the most outgoing, friendly, well-socialized puppy I have ever had. She loves everybody and everything, and she's full of beans. So Queenie's latest trick, she's opening doors. Now that's not unusual. All my German Shepherds have learned to open the doors in the house. However, the way they've done is bashing their nose till something happens, and sometimes when it doesn't happen, they don't seem to understand why. Queenie is not troubled by this. I'm sitting in my study, and the door is closed, and suddenly the door swings open. Queenie comes in on her hind legs with one forepaw pushing the door, while the other forepaw is holding down the latch. This stopped her from falling over when the door opened, that she's still holding on to the latch. So, just calm as butter, comes walking in on her hind legs with a big smile on her face, holding the latch and going, "Look, Mom, I opened the door." I said to my beloved, "Have you seen this?" And he says, "Oh yeah, she keeps doing it when I'm in the bathroom." And now we actually have to lock the doors because Queenie knows this works. She gets it. She understands how it's working at some level. And as she gets up on her hind legs, puts one paw against the door to brace herself, then puts the other paw on the latch, holds it down, and walks forward on her hind legs, still pushing the door with that first paw. Man, I have seen smart. I thought Captain was a rocket scientist. Queenie is just scaring me. So you will see a picture of Queenie in the show notes, looking wistfully in the camera, saying, "But Mom, it's great that I can open the doors. Now we can always be together." And also you will see her riding majestically in the Prius of Love because she's Queenie. She is exactly what she was named. I got that one right. In the meantime, the beloved hubs in his eyes. He's doing really well. Everything is good. And so, we're still just a little on edge. He's got another doctor's appointment tomorrow. But that's all doing well. And thank you, those of you who have so kindly inquired. On the calendar, Stitches, Southern California, November 11th through 13th. I'm hoping to be there, at least on the 13th, on Sunday. And it wouldn't be bad to have a get-together. If any of you are interested, let me know. I mean, I could just organize one on that Sunday or on Saturday evening. I don't really want to hit the show until Sunday because I don't really want to spend money on yarn. I've got so much. But I do want to see everybody, including my favorite dealers who used to come to the Cognitive Fiber Retreat. The Grand Canyon is still on June 5th through 9th of 2023. I'm hoping for Sunnybank in August of 2023. There are some factors that make me wonder if I will ever go back. It's a little awkward. They kind of read the writing on the wall. And the Sunnybank Memorial is slowly turning things over to the Kali Health Foundation. The Sunnybank Memorial used to exist independent of Kali Health. And I liked that. That kept them very focused on Albert Payson Terhune, the author, who is one of my childhood favorite authors. And that he's really the reason I go. I go as an English professor, not so much as a Kali fancier. The CHF people have been a little cold to me because they realize I don't donate to them. I donate everything to the Sunnybank Memorial instead to keep the park going. Now it looks like CHF will own both, and this year, and that's good reason. It was a good reason to do this for a number of things. The founder of TSM died this year at age 100, and I think they wanted her to die knowing that TSM was an independent agent, still promoting the park and the works of Terhune. But I think we all realize that's going to fade with time, and so it's natural that CHF should take it over. But they're branding it now with their own brand and all that, and it doesn't feel the way it used to feel to me. And I realize an era is passing here 100 years later after the great dogs lived and died at Sunnybank. So I don't know, but I still have my friends there. I love them and I miss them. They're all loyal followers of CHF, so this is my hang-up, not theirs. But we'll see how that works out. I'd love to go back because I love Sunnybank. I love the grounds. I love the atmosphere. I love the mood. And, the fact that it's made it 100 years under its own steam with input from CHF that was much appreciated is a glorious tribute. In the meantime, Minerva gets the last word. And the last word, strangely, is I'd like to extend my condolences to my friends who are mourning the passing of Queen Elizabeth II of the United Kingdom. And by the way, the Queen is dead. God save the King. I lived under her benevolent reign for 2.5 years, and I've heard everybody take every possible position on the situation. I could say a lot of things about it. I think one of the interesting things I saw happen in my time was the role changed so drastically, and she changed with it. And she really was trying to be a queen for all the people. Princess Diana taught everybody, including Elizabeth, that she could be doing more. And I do think, despite her rocky relationship with Diana, Queen Elizabeth tried to do more. I think it's a mistake to blame her for the colonial events. I think that the government is not in her hands and never has been. But I have been very moved by the ways she tried to change, she tried to update, she tried to become more egalitarian. And so in the beginning of her reign, she was just this debutante. Nobody expected much, that she was just a showpiece in a gown with diamonds going to all the right places. At the end of her reign, she was really working hard to meet people and to be representative. And she made some significant strides against racism, which her government and even her family did not always follow. So I feel a great loss there. And for the rest of you, work it out. I really don't care, but I would like to extend my condolences to all my British friends and to the others who are mourning the passing of a great woman. And Minerva, of course, is puzzled because everybody keeps saying the Queen is dead, and she keeps saying, no, I'm perfectly alive. And then Queenie says, what are you even talking about? And so there you go. Minerva's last word is God save the Queen, God give her good rest, and God save the King. And on that note, everybody, please remember, get all the COVID stuff done that you need to get done. Try to distance, try to remember there are people out there who are immune compromised. But remember, the whole point is everybody, let's take care of each other, stay safe, take care of each other, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye. So we have come to the end of another episode of Cognitive. Please do not use this podcast to diagnose yourself. If you think you are having a mental health problem, please contact a licensed mental health professional. Show notes for these episodes can be found at cognitivepodcast, all one word, .blogspot.com. Episodes can be found at iTunes under the name Cognitive Podcast, but also can be found posted next to the show notes on the Blogspot page. Thank you so much for listening. Everybody, stay safe, take care of each other, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.